All right, everybody, welcome back. We are working on our space shooter game, and we're ready to add some rocks in space. We're going to add some asteroids. And so what I want you to do is, if you don't have any yet, you're just going to right-click on sprites. You're going to create one sprite, and you're going to call it SPR_asteroid. We're just going to make it singular here. Asteroid. One asteroid. Now, instead of actually making one, we're going to make 3 different asteroids so that they have slightly different look and feel, so that it doesn't look too uniform. If they all looked exactly the same, it might be slightly suspect. So we're going to draw 3 different ones, and we're going to use 3 different frames. But using our code, what we're going to do is we're not going to animate it. We're just going to select one at random and make sure it just stays on that one sprite. So let's go ahead and edit our image. We're going to make it 64 by 64. I'm going to click Edit Image. I'm going to start by drawing a white outline. I'm going to use the line tool. And so I'm just going to start drawing it. Now, one of the things about your asteroids is that what we're going to do is that we're going to have a thing called collisions. And what collisions are, of course, is when, obviously, your ship collides with an asteroid. Okay? If we make a really, really, really complex shape, it's going to be harder for GameMaker to sort of calculate when it's hitting an object or not. So if you make it too complex, it's going to make it harder for your game to work. So don't go too fancy with this. And really, it's just what the outer shape is. If you get it close to the edge, you could actually change the collision, what they call a mask, where you could make it like a circle where things don't quite hit it, yet it registers a hit. So it's really going to be up to you and how you code it. So I'm just going to make one like this. I'm going to get my paint bucket. I'm going to switch my colors, and I'm going to paint bucket black inside, and I'm going to draw 2 more. And so to draw another one, you just click this plus sign over here. Gives you a new frame. Notice the green bar at the bottom indicates what frame we're looking at. I click over here. I've got a new frame. So I'm going to draw 2 more, and then I'll come back on my video. Okay, nothing too fancy. I got 3 different asteroids. Each one has a different shape, but this is all one sprite. If I were to animate it, you'd see it cycling through all the different pictures. We don't want to animate it. Instead, what we want to do is in code, we're going to select one. So we're going to create an object for it. And before I do, I just kind of want to walk through a couple things here. So I've drawn my asteroids, and I want to use this tutorial. This is the one I've been following. This is for the older GameMaker Studio. But I really like this illustration right here. You got this image 0, image 1, image 2. These are different frames in an animation. Now, there's something interesting you'll note, and that's we begin with 0. And you might be thinking, well, that's just a really odd thing. Well, you know, 0 is a number. And actually, programmers have taken on the convention that we always begin counting at 0. It's really important for you to understand this because the next set of information is based on this idea that the first frame, also known as sub-image, is 0. Okay? So let's go to the game on here. This frame right here is frame 0. This is 1. This is 2. Since we start at 0 and we have 3 images, 0 is the first number. So this is and by the way, we also call this indexing. When you have more than one thing, we call it an index. It's like the index in a book or something like that, right? You go to the index to find out where something is, correct? So that's kind of what's going on here. So the index position of 0 is the first sprite or frame. Index position of 1 is the next. Index position of 2 is the last. So keep that in mind as we program because all of this is going to be based on it. We're going to go over some new functions too. But let's go ahead and create an object. So we're going to create an object for our asteroid. So actually, let's just go ahead and close this window here. Okay. And all right. Oh, before we do that, we need to set the origin at middle center. So always want to set the origin at middle center. Okay. All right. And so we have all the different sprites. We're ready to make our object now. So we're going to right click and we're going to create an object. And this is going to be following the same naming convention as before, obj_asteroid. okay, because it's an asteroid. We're going to choose the sprite asteroid like so. So what we're going to do, just like we did with the ship, we're going to do a few things on create. So when they first appear in the room, what we're going to do is we're going to select one of the 3 frames at random. We're going to select one. We're also going to make sure it doesn't animate. By default, if you stick an object in the room and it's an animated sprite, it will just animate through and cycle through all the pictures. We don't want that. So we need to tell it to stop animating. So we're going to have it stop animating. We're going to have it pick a random image. Then we're going to rotate it because we don't want them all to look exactly the same. Each one's going to be rotated a random amount as well. In other words, the topic for today is random. We're going to do a lot of randomness. So there's actually 2 functions we're going to use for that. But let's go ahead and add our create event. On create, when it first appears in the room, what do we want to do? We want to randomly select a sprite. We want to stop it from animating. So let's do some code execution. So I'm going to drag the execute code out. So we have it here. And I'm going to try to get this window as big as I can. So I'm going to hide this. And I'm going to even hide this part here. So it's execute code. First thing we're going to do is we're going to target the image speed. Now, image speed is a variable that represents not the speed of the object moving across the screen, but the speed in which an animation animates. Okay? So the idea of image speed of 0, we're saying we're not going to animate it. We're just going to keep it at whatever image it's at. Okay? So if we were to put a number, it would be how many frames we would show in one step. So this of course is, you got to be very important. You got to be very careful here to give a very small number on image speed because we're doing 60 frames a second, but we're just halting it from animating. Okay? Don't animate the sprite. Okay, so the image speed has to do with that. We're also going to do another variable very similar. It's called image index. Okay, image index is telling us which image of the different sub-images or which frame we want to select. But we want it to be random. So we're going to use this function called irandom. Irandom. Now, the I stands for integer. Okay. So integer is a whole number, okay? And basically, we're going to give it a number in here, and this number is going to represent basically a random number between 0 and whatever number we type. Remember, we had 3 images, but the first image frame was considered 0. So we're going to pick a random number between 0 and 2. So 0, 1, or 2. That's 3 different random numbers, right? Just like I showed you, there was frame 0, frame 1, frame 2, but that represented 3 different frames. So this irandom selects a number between 0 and 2. So I just went ahead and added it as a comment. irandom2 selects 0, 1, or 2. Okay, so keep in mind that it selects 0, so this is one of 3 randomly chosen numbers. And I stands for integer, excuse me, integer. So these are all whole numbers, okay? So image speed equals 0 means don't animate because image speed is how many times it cycles through. Image index, which image are we going to select? Next, we're going to rotate the asteroid to a random rotation. Remember, an angle of 0 or a direction of 0 means it's just in its default direction. So we're going to set direction, it's our first variable, and we're going to set this direction to another irandom. This time, we're going to do any random position within a circle, which is 360 degrees. So we just put direction equals irandom 360. It could be 0, in which case it doesn't rotate. It could go all the way up to 360, in which case it rotates all the way around. But it's just going to randomly rotate it so they all look a little bit different. And then we're going to do a speed here. So we're going to give it a really low speed because we want them sort of like going relatively slowly. So on the speed, we're going to just set it to 0.5. And then we're going to add a bit of randomness to this. Okay, so we're going to just type random. Now we're using a different random function. This time it's random, not irandom. So the difference is irandom stands for integer. Random means it's going to be a random real number. In other words, a number with a precise number. So this could be anywhere between, I think it's like 0.0001 or something like that, all the way to 1.99999. It's going to select some number like that. So it's going to be a lot more of a precise number. Okay, so that's going to be sort of the range in which that's going to be found, and we're just going to add it to it. So basically, it could have any kind of speed like that. Now, another thing you could do is you could actually give it a negative number and change this number to change the range. For now, we're just going to leave it like it is. So let's go ahead and put some of the asteroids onto the screen and test it out. So what I want you to do is once you got this code, I want you to go to your room. Not that way. You're going to go to the room and you're going to place some asteroids there. Before I go there, I forgot one little piece. I forgot the equal sign. We need that equal sign. This is what sets the variable. Okay, we're saying speed is going to be equal to this number. Okay, and this is on create. I just realized I probably need to clarify there is a difference between image angle and direction. The difference is direction not only rotates the sprite itself, but actually changes the heading or the direction it's going to face. So when we add a speed, it's going to go in the same direction, not just a rotated sprite. If we wanted to just rotate the sprite, we would do image underscore angle. So I go to the room, and now what I want to do is add some random asteroid objects. A couple things before I add them, just want to remind you, you got to have the instances layer highlighted, okay? And you have to drag the object, don't drag the sprite. Drag out the object, go ahead and click there. So the nice thing about this, I'm going to move my ship to the center. My code's going to do it, but I think it's easier to do that. So right now I'm just adding them. Later on I'll show you how you could randomly add a bunch of asteroids. Now notice in this screen they're all the same sprite image. They're all looking like they're facing the same way. Let's run it and see the difference. You notice there's different images and they are going in different directions. And right away you're going to realize we have a problem. My asteroids left the screen and they're not back. So we're going to have to add a little wrap on our asteroid. So let's quickly do that. And I think that'll be all the time we have for this presentation. So for this, remember, it's the same thing we did with the ship. We're going to add an event. It is outside room, which is under other outside room. And then we're going to tell it to wrap. And I've already used it before, so it shows up under recently used. If you don't see it, scroll down to movement, and you'll see it there. Okay, so we're just going to wrap it. Let's run it again and see if that's working. And it should be. So in the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is actually make it so if I fire on an asteroid, I can actually get it to hit and blow up. And of course, if an asteroid runs into me, I need to blow up too. And of course, the game would be over. And then we're going to add a little more advanced functionality, but stay tuned for that.